My name is James Morris, and this is my senior research on psychological effects of sadness on linguistics. So, the purpose of my study is to build on research into word choice and affect as information processing models. Affect as information processing sounds like a mouthful, but what it really means is how your mood can affect how you think, and how you think can affect your word choice. This will be accomplished by conducting a construct replication of Maslow's, Shrikant, Frantes, and Andrews from January 2020, informed by Forgas 2013. The hypothesis of my research was that there would be a relationship between the negative mood induction treatment and word choice. So Forgas is one of the leading researchers in this area of affective information processing, and he's worked since the early 90s to form a base of knowledge with other psychologists about how positive and negative moods can affect information processing and interpersonal behavior. So the major finding of his work from a meta-analysis he made of his own work in 2013 was that sadness as a mood has a multitude of affirmative cognitive effects that are markedly different from those of a happy person. And chiefly, people in negative affective states communicate more clearly than others, as shown by the graph on the right. So, Maslich et al. From 2020 is the most recent research on this topic. It was a little different from a lot of the other topics in the area because they used a significant amount of data along with many different collection models. And so it mixed early linguistics research and modern affective information processing, and this study was built on Forgas's work, but it measured changes in happiness, sadness, anxiety, and calmness using three groups: control, a positive scenario, and a negative scenario. And the major presentation of the research was through expressive writing, meaning uh, given a prompt and given a scenario, how do you write about it, and given a positive scenario, how does that writing change from a negative scenario or a neutral scenario? So the participants for the study are undergraduate students at a small Catholic liberal arts university. Participants were either uncompensated or compensated with a small amount of extra credit towards grades after participation. So the participants were given informed consent, and any names would be stripped from data used before the analysis be using Qualtrics. Upon receipt of consent, participants would be asked to take a mood assessment, the positive and negative affect schedule, called the PANAS. Once completed, they'd be given one of two prompts. The control prompt would be asking them to recount their last week's schedule and any major events that happened. The treatment group would be prompted to write expressively about any major happenings in the past week. Once completed, participants would be asked to take the PANAS again as a pre-test and post-test analysis. At the end of the survey, demographic information would be collected, and all documents produced to be saved under numbers rather than names to secure participant confidentiality. So my results came from a paired samples t-test to compare the PANAS pre and post-test results, and shown here, the scores of the control group and the treatment group were almost the exact same to all 2-3 decimal places. A Pearson product moment correlation found a very dependable correlation between the pre and post tests with a correlation almost 1, with p less than 0.001. So my hypothesis was not supported. Looking at the duration of the looking at the duration of the time taken between the control and treatment groups was actually really interesting because with us taking aside one outlier, excluding one outlier, there was a significant difference between how long it took to finish the control writing versus the treatment writing for the entire survey. And then a Tukey post hoc was shown that I showed that that was the case. The implications of the research are relatively unclear, but that can be attributed to the history effect, given that participants are living through a global pandemic and the relative difficulty of the semester being one of the harder ones. In both conditions, the following words were chosen in some form with a high frequency describing their situations. And this list shows that there is a significant negative affect among both participant groups. Limitations to the study came from using the PANAS as a pre and post test assessment, as it didn't serve to deliver any clear and effectual results. The semantic analysis was done by hand, and so there was a definite limitation of experimenter bias, possibly, and then there was contamination between the groups because negative affect could not be induced effectively. And then because this was done using Qualtrics data analysis, it was lacking in experimenter control. For future research, I would suggest a laboratory setting to increase experimenter control, specifically in the realms of duration and response quality, because those had high variability in my study, and standardizing that would be important to the results. For a different assessment, I would use a mood induction and a post test versus a pre and post test model because the PNAS didn't show any real clear results. I would pull a more varied sample from a wider population so that the subject effects and subject variables would be more broad, so that there is not a streamlining and a similarity between subjects. And then I would suggest more replications because this area is very interesting, and the more replications can lead to a wider knowledge base as well. And that's the end. Thank you.